kind of night here. And it's because one of the things that we often don't think about is our brain. Aside from the fact we want to think faster, we want to remember more, we want to make sure that we have longevity for the long haul. We just don't talk about brain. We talk about everything else. And so tonight is unique about just brain health. And it's going to be a different format than normal. It's going to be a lot of fun. And we have some amazing people with us, obviously. But my name is Dr. Paul Jernigan. I want to just dive right in to introduce Jill LaFond, a dear friend of mine, someone who is passionate about wellness and health, and above all, longevity, and has a lot to share about this tonight. So go ahead, Jill.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight. One of the reasons why I'm so passionate about my health is I don't want to end up like my mom and dad. I love them dearly. However, I've watched what they've done. They were the product of eating processed food, being a little bit overweight, having high blood pressure, high cholesterol. And in their cases, the lack of their coronary health has greatly impacted their blood flow, which now is showing up in their memory loss and in their brain. So that's part of my passion around this. We've, here at Vfinity, we've really been focusing on total wellness. And a couple of weeks ago, the topic of brain health came up, and we're going to have Lisa DeVoren on with us for a second. She was really the catalyst in making us want to really come on and share and talk about this tonight. It's kind of come full circle. We've been talking about wellness, we've been talking about weight loss, as we've all been diving in on, what's required for brain health and how do we keep our brains healthy. It's everything we've already been talking about for total wellness. So that's the fun part. But Lisa, why don't you come on with us and share, some of the really thought-provoking things you've shared with us and some of the research and whatnot that you've kind of been diving in on, and the things that have really been getting you to kind of pay attention to this recently.
Thank you. I will. So yeah, the brain is something that, I hear mentioned that, this is good for your brain or whatever, but it never really resonated with me. There's really no tests that are done. There's no blood markers, right? There's nothing that shows up that says, oh, you should improve this for your brain. So it's kind of intangible for me, right? There's never really scans done. If you go to a doctor and you have a problem with your knee or your hip or your colon or your gut or your heart, they do a test on it, but the brain, they never do. Right? If we start to have memory problems, we are saying, oh, that's just a senior moment, and blow it off. Or if someone goes to a doctor for depression or anxiety, they don't really check the brain. They just prescribe based on whatever you're telling them. And it's kind of a guess to see whether or not it works. But I started reading a book by Dr. Amen on the brain, which is a fabulous book and really simple to read and not too technical. And I started to learn all of the things that the lifestyle basics and Vfinity are the products that the ingredients are helping the brain. And so I was like, oh my gosh, well, thank you, Vfinity, for having our backs on that without us even really knowing that we should be concentrating on it. So for me, that was a real win. Some of the things like intermittent fasting, that helps. I always thought about that, cleaning up our bodies and getting rid of all of the radical cells, but I never really thought about it helping our brain too, but it does. And I'll just tell you one other aha moment for me was drinking water, right? In the morning, I'm always like, oh, you need to drink water, hydrate your liver, your kidneys. Well, you need to hydrate your brain. Your brain is like 70% water, right? And so when you have a headache, I always knew you should always try to curb it with a glass of water because you may be dehydrated, but kind of never really put two and two together. So it's been kind of an eye-opener for me.
Awesome. And in your case, your mom and dad, I know that you've mentioned, they have senior moments, right? Nothing that you're concerned of there being huge memory gaps or things like that. Like we haven't gotten there yet with them, right? Yeah, it's really fascinating. And I think that, I'm going through this, and it's heartbreaking. It's just heartbreaking to go through it, showing your dad how to take a shower. Dad, can you wash the dishes? And wait, show me what you need me to do. That's what I'm going through right now. And the thing that's forever on my mind is, what can I do so I'm not like this? Or what can I do to stack the deck in my favor so that, my kids won't, have to struggle with me, like it's such a sad thing. And I don't think people really talk about it. I mean, until you're going through it, you can't appreciate it. Christina Olender, who's been with us for the past two and a half years on her wellness journey, I just learned the other day that her dad's both her mom and dad have passed, but her dad passed, very similar to my dad, and what my dad's going through. So it's just an important topic, and you're right, it's a total win, because it's come full circle, right? Like we've talked about wellness and total weight loss. Well, oh my gosh, it's also about brain health. It's everything we're teaching. Let's go ahead and go on to this first slide. So this is a slide, if you've been with us before, you've seen this slide. Vfinity Wellness Your Way. It pulls together Vfinity's products, our lifestyle basics, and our support. The support is a very interesting aspect of this, because what all of the research shows and all of the studies show is that the social connections that you have with folks, and that you have a social network, is so important as you're aging and for your brain. And oh my gosh, it's the same for weight loss too, isn't it? I mean, it's what we've been teaching everybody. So of course it'd be great for your brain too. We wanted to put up this slide just to kind of illustrate that. Dr. Paul, I'm going to touch on lifestyle basics briefly, and then I'll pull you in on that. Okay. So our lifestyle basics, Lisa mentioned the intermittent fasting. One of the things with the intermittent fasting is, very simply, it converts your body to burning fat for fuel instead of sugar for fuel. And when your body's burning fat for fuel, ketones are produced. And the belief behind ketones is that they help with the neural connections in the brain. Okay, so that's a good thing, right? An MRI of my dad's brain would show that there are literally areas in his brain where there's no activity, right? I forget what the technical term is. I'm so not technical on this medical stuff, but there's no brain activity there. Well, the intermittent fasting and the ketones they believe it helps with that. Low carb way of eating, right? A low carb way of eating is anti-inflammatory. That's super, super important, right? Inflammation anywhere, in particular in the brain, is not good. Exercise is great. It keeps all those little tiny capillaries blood flowing, as Dr. Paul likes to say. That's super important. If your heart is not strong, and if your heart is not, the blood is not pumping through your arteries, guess where it's not flowing through? It's not flowing through your brain. If you have lack of blood flow to your brain, guess what? Parts of your brain are not going to be, again, that was my dad's issue. Dr. Paul, why don't we bring you on in here, and you can fill in a little bit with the peace practice and the other lifestyle basics there.
Yeah, and one of the things, and it's so interesting because if you want to focus on your body and being well in the body, it's great, because all those things are also going to support your brain. But there are people, because of having people in their lives that have gone through dementia and Alzheimer's and other challenges, that are like, I'm going to focus on my brain health. And guess what? You focus on your brain health, there are certain things you can do that are a little more specific for the brain, but generally speaking, anything you're going to do for your brain is also going to support your body. So it's beautiful that wellness is across the board. But it's interesting because I have a dear friend whose mom deals with dementia, and the challenge with it is that this person is 65, and now for the first time, my friend is really focused on, what do I need to do to keep my brain from doing what my mom's brain did? Now, there are genetics involved and all these kinds of things. We'll talk about that later, but it's interesting because it's 65. They're trying to fix or reroute the damage that's been done over years of maybe not being as healthy as they could be and doing wellness types of habits. So what we love at Vfinity is that we're here to help you be well, and that includes everything, but brain health is a huge part of that. And it's really cool to see how all these things connect together. So peace practice in general with the lifestyle basics, I love. They know that stress degrades the brain, that stress causes problems in terms of brain health and longevity. And so anything we can do to reduce our cortisol levels, to reduce the inflammation that happens when our cortisol levels are elevated, reduce how our body's responding with blood sugars, and make sure our insulin resistance isn't getting high, because the more insulin resistant we are, guess what? Our blood sugars are going to be higher. Our blood sugars are higher. Guess what that does to the brain? It creates inflammation. And it's just, so there's so many things that are interconnected, but peace practice, again, it's part of the lifestyle basics because we want people to be well and to focus on the things that bring more peace, whatever that happens to be. And then, of course, Lisa talked about water beautifully. Our brain is barely more than 70% water. It's intense how we cannot function as well without water, and our brain and the speed of our processing and memory, cognition, all these things are so important. So the lifestyle basics it's just cool that that's such a huge part of, what we teach people in terms of wellness. But so much of it has to do with brain health as well. So if you know someone that's thinking about their brain health and how things are working, it's cool because we can support them in that, which is also going to support their entire body. And for a lot of people, believe it or not, is going to lead to weight loss too, if that's something they need. So it's kind of fun that it all does come full circle, as you've said before, Gerald.
Dr. Paul, let's just touch on one thing. I'm going to refer back to your friend, right? And you're talking about somebody who's 65. Is that too late for them to get started? Is that too late for them? Tell us why.
No, the old theory of the brain used to be like, the brain is not plastic after 5 years old, because and early in life, when you're born up until 5 or 6, specifically with vision, for example, and the way that the brain develops visual pathways in the brain. Typically, if a child has a vision problem and it's not compensated for by the age of 7 in one eye, that child will not develop the pathways in the brain to be able to see. Their eye may be perfectly fine, but there's a part of their brain that didn't develop because the brain is very plastic between the age of 0 and 7. But there was a theory that maybe the brain isn't very plastic after that. The reality is it is. And there's so much proof out there that people can rewire their brains in a sense, but that the brain does still create new neural connections even later in life. And so 65 is not too late. Oh my gosh, it's like, why wouldn't you give it a shot and let the brain do what is possible? But wellness is everything. So yeah, 65 is not too late. A lot of things that we're learning more, there's more and more out there around like things like cordyceps and lion's mane and all these different kind of mushrooms and nootropics to support the brain health and cognition, all these things. But when it comes down to the basics, if somebody's not focusing on the basics of their diet and possibly a low carb way of lifestyle, intermittent fasting, all these things that are so basic for the human body, the brain will benefit from that too. So anybody, if they're 65 and they can start doing any of the lifestyle basics while incorporating really smart foods and products, obviously that we have designed for specific reasons in the body, if they can start anywhere at 65, it's always going to be better than just saying, well, I'm going to give up. I'm just going to hope that this train wreck doesn't happen down the road and I'm not going to try to find a different track to run on. So, it just, there is no time. If we're still breathing and kicking, it's never too late to start making changes to make a difference.
I'm gonna give you a break on talking there for a second. I just want to touch on it. I'll let you fill in the gap when I get done, because I feel like I've heard you say this enough times that I almost sound as smart as when you say it. So some people tell me, oh, you know what, I just have these genes, like my parents were like this and I'm gonna have to deal with the same thing. But you have taught me absolutely, yep, you have the same genes as your parents. However, how your genes are expressed is a function of diet and lifestyle. And in fact, there's been a bunch of clinical research done on this, and they've followed folks on this. And 100%, just because your parents have something, that doesn't mean necessarily that you're absolutely on that same track. True or false?
True. True. Why? And so, and I've done a lot of genetic work over the years, and there is a specific gene that if you have this particular genetic mutation, you are more likely, because of the blueprint of your genes, you are more likely to develop dementia or cognitive decline later in life. And it's called APOE. But that gene is one gene. But the reality is your entire, the trajectory of your brain and your mind health is not determined by one gene. There are millions of genes and millions of different ways that genes can express themselves. And it's called epigenetics, which is determined by lifestyle choices, foods that we put in, all the different things that we do to supplement, our body in terms of what it needs. So yes, you might have a certain blueprint, and it may say you're more likely to develop these things. But I think a lot of times the false idea that what my parents dealt with, I'm just going to have to deal with. You hear that all the time. And the reality is not that. The reality is so different from that. But the reality is, years past, before we understood more about genes and what's happening in epigenetics, years past, people often would have the same lifestyle habits and choices in food that their parents had for generations. And of course, you're going to see the same gene expression. Of course, you're going to see the same thing. So I found out things about my genes as to why everybody in my family has prostate cancer. Like all the men on my dad's side of the family, every single one. And guess what? I don't have to do that because I understand my genes in a way that allows me to make choices terms of the nutrients I'm putting in my body and helping my liver function, then I don't have to deal with that down the road. So we all know so much about general basic wellness principles. And that's what we want to teach people is like, you do these, you are stacking the deck so far further in your favor than most people would even dream of stacking the deck in their favor, because of the proven science and research around so many of the, the lifestyle basics, and of course the nutrients and ingredients that we have in the products that we use and thrive on. So yeah, what you said, Jill, is definitely accurate. Just because you have that gene doesn't mean you're doomed to that end, and that's not
absolutely. So let's go ahead and move on to our next slide. And because I do really want to dive in on the products. Lisa, you said it best. Thank you, Vfinity, for setting us up, because there's an ingredient, at least one ingredient in every single one of these products that can help us with our brain health. So, and again, I can't make my explanation for all of this stuff is much higher level than Dr. Paul when he'll dive in. I'm just going to start with the keto perk, and Dr. Paul, I'm going to ask you to jump in here in a second. We've always talked about keto perk being, for me, when I first started drinking it, I don't know why, but every time I drank it, I just felt like, I know I'm doing something so good for my brain. Yes, it's really good for you, but it's got MCT oil in it. It's got collagen in it. I mean, it's a delicious cup. Dr. Paul, what else would you say about the keto perk in terms of brain?
So it's called keto perk for a reason, because it encourages, if someone is doing a more low carb lifestyle, it encourages ketone production with the MCT oils and all that kind of thing. Celtic sea salt, which is amazing for brain health too. But beyond that, the keto perk obviously has coffee in it, right? And the caffeine and the antioxidants in coffee, both are really important, not just because of, helping, speed up the connectivity of the brain with caffeine. You know how you feel if you have caffeine, you're like, ooh, I'm firing on all pistons in my brain. I can think fast, I can talk fast, all these things. But the reality is it actually enhances the brain's functional connections, both the antioxidants and the caffeine in coffee do. So there's something to be said about that. But not to mention, when you're adding, the potential for more ketosis, more ketones going to the brain, which fuel the brain, not to mention the MCT oil that fuels the brain. It encourages a really, really positive experience for the brain when you start every day with your keto perk, which is why I always start with one and then I have another mid-morning, because it just keeps things going. But I know it's doing good things for my brain no matter what.
Excellent. And on the heels of caffeine, let's talk about the V3 Original, because the V3 Original does have caffeine in it. So you've got the benefit. And one of the things that Lisa and I have been doing over the course of the past couple of days is we've been kind of diving in, and I encourage everyone to do the same thing. We're not here dispensing medical advice. We're just sharing what we've learned. Become an advocate for your own health. Go out and Google, list of all the, great foods for brain health, because coffee is on there because of the caffeine. The V3 has caffeine in it. The other thing I've learned in doing all this is B complex vitamins. The V3 Original, it's a full B complex vitamin in there. It also has the PEA, which is great, the nootropic effect. Dr. Paul, what else would you say about the V3 Original for brain health?
Well, for me, it really comes down to the B complex, because B vitamins are absolutely the lifeblood of every energy producing part of every single cell in our body. So, if you have B12 deficiencies, which so many people do, you're not getting what you need in terms of not only brain function, but also full detox function with the body, which of course helps detox the brain. So that's the happiest part for me. Of course, nootropics are amazing. And there's so much research out there now on nootropics that we didn't have before. But the B3 is it's a little powerhouse for the brain. And in terms of even just dopamine type response with the brain and how we have cravings, it's amazing that B3 can do what it does in terms of just curbing all the cravings that people have. And so if we're having less cravings, guess what? More than likely, we're going to eat less processed sugar, which is also good for the brain. So there's a lot that goes into that. But yeah, it's very, very, very potent.
Absolutely. Let's hop over to your favorite product, the dose. As I've been doing my research on foods that are great for brain health, turmeric is like top of the list. Turmeric is one of the 12 ingredients in the dose. That one keeps coming up, but I know there's a ton more in that dose that's great for the brain too. So can you tell us about that?
Well, yeah, and I mean, with turmeric, you have an ingredient in that is curcumin, which is so powerful and has been proven time and time again to have memory and cognitive results when it's related to dementia and Alzheimer's and just overall brain function. So, turmeric, people call it so many different things in terms of what it can do for the body. But as far as brain health, it's amazing. But the dose I love because there's so much that goes into the dose. You have aspects of it that are about supporting the good bacteria in the gut and getting rid of the bad bacteria we don't need. There's this gut-brain axis that happens in the body. And if our gut is not healthy, guess what? Neither will be our brain and the hormones and all the important parts of our brain. So for me, a big part of the dose is the fulvic and the humic acid that are like these ultra ancient minerals basically that we put in here that support the right kind of microbiome in our gut. So that's one thing. And then of course it's filled with proanthocyanins and anthocyanins, which are, when you look at berries that have that beautiful color, the pigment in the berries is so powerful and important in terms of not only protecting the brain cells from oxidation, proven that it protects the brain cells from aging, but it also boosts the communication and the neural connections within the brain. So those are like little tiny things outside of the turmeric that are in there, but it also has this vitamin A, D, K triad, which is huge for immune function, which can affect the brain. There's a lot that goes on in the brain that we don't really know in terms of how viruses affect the brain and all these different things. But the dose, it's just an all around amazing product for so many reasons. And, I could go on and on about different aspects of it, but even something, I'm sure you've heard of choline before. If anybody eats eggs, just know eggs are like a miracle food, in my opinion, because eggs have so much what's called choline and lutein in them. And as an eye doctor, lutein is one of those things that we talk about. But choline is such a powerful piece of the puzzle in terms of our brains and how they function. Our brains are basically fat cells that connect, right? And choline is a very, very, and phosphatidylcholine, some of the things, very, very important parts of the brain, being able to make those neural connections they need. And the dose supports all of this in so many ways. So I could go on. There's a ton of ingredients in the dose that replace 7 of the bottles I used to take. But yes, it's another piece of the puzzle when it comes to brain health and of course, overall wellness.
And as you were talking about that, you touched on the significance of gut health, and really our gut, we all know our gut, our brain's health goes the way our gut health goes. And that's why our V-biotic is so important. Pre-pro plus biotic. We don't have to go in depth on the V-biotic tonight. We've done that before, but because of how significant the V-biotic is for our gut's health, it is why it's super, super important for our brain health as well. V1 smoothie also has some probiotic cultures in it. It's got collagen, grass-fed whey, full multi-vitamin complex in there. So again, it kind of fills in the gaps from a diet perspective. Anything else you want to say about the V1 smoothie, Dr. Paul, that I didn't touch on for the brain?
No, that's it. I mean, it's basically the stacking the deck in your favor by filling in all the gaps that you don't normally get. And the brain runs on so much, and a part of that is minerals too. So there's a lot that goes into the V1 smoothie, and it's powerful for that as well.
It's so funny. I had 2 people yesterday order the V1 smoothie, and we didn't have any sales running. That's amazing, because the V1 smoothie is the most expensive product to ship. But the reason they did it was they're like, this saves me when I want a snack. I mix it up. I have it. Sometimes it sits in the fridge for 130 calories. I could snack on my V1 smoothie all day. And I know I'm actually giving myself something great and convenient. So, I mean, that was just a huge testimony. The fact that I had 2 people do it, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like for me to hear it 2 times, our products fill in the gaps. We've got the V2 greens over there, a combination of 72 fruits, veggies, superfoods. The thing that we have not touched on tonight is polyphenols. Polyphenols is a classification of, I don't even know what you call it. It's a compound. It's a classification of, here's non-technical stuff, okay? And within the polyphenols, if you look up all of the foods that are great for your brain, it's because they include the polyphenols. And it's been long believed that polyphenols were just very powerful antioxidants, which we know is great. It can help protect the cells from oxidative stress. However, what they're finding is these polyphenols actually are neuroprotective, and they can protect the brain from neurotoxins. I mean, that's crazy. From berries, leafy greens, veggies, you're getting all those polyphenols. The V2 greens fills in the gaps. How many people out there are getting, their 3 to 5 servings of fruits and vegetables a day? How many think they're getting it? But if you really went and wrote down what you're getting, are you really getting it? Come on now. I know you're probably, and not everybody is. That product is just amazing for that. And then we have our V Relief. You know, Dr. Paul talked about stress. Just looking at this bottle in my refrigerator, and I pick it up and it's cold and it feels so good in my hands. I have been doing my V Relief every day now for the past couple weeks. It's just amazing from that stress component. So I know if I turned it over to you, Dr. Paul, you'd find a million more things to say about that. But in the sake of time, I'm going to keep going. We're going to roll to the next slide. So real quick, some brain power foods. I'm not going to go through these in depth. I'm just sharing this graphic. If you go out and Google, there's some really great graphics out there. I borrowed this from a medical institution. You know, fatty fish, eggs. Dr. Paul talked about the choline, avocados, turmeric, coconut oil. You know, these are all great things for the brain. Again, it's the polyphenols in these foods that are helping the brain. Let's go ahead and go on to that next slide. Some more foods: sea vegetables, kale and leafy greens, berries, olive oil, walnuts, fermented foods, coffee. You know, if you go out and Google what foods are good for the brains, you're going to find charts that have a lot of these foods or some variations. Find one that resonates for you. Pick them. You know, can add these foods to your diet, or add the Vfinity products that have these ingredients, because our products have so many of these ingredients, or the healthy part benefits of these ingredients. Let's go on to that last slide, or that next slide. So something we hadn't really touched. This is, again, another great graphic I found out there. Lo and behold, it's a lot of our lifestyle basics, a different change up, exercise. They pitch the Mediterranean diet. We've really followed a low carb way of eating. There's something else out there that's known as the MIND diet, which is a combination of the DASH diet and the Mediterranean diet. You know, at Vfinity, we've never really pushed, if you will, a diet. We've encouraged folks to eat lower carb, higher healthy fat, moderate proteins. We have so many people succeeding because people find what works for them. You know, Christina, you and I were talking, and we were talking about, you know, how many more fruits are in it, and the fact that there's quinoa, and you were telling me you kind of cut out the quinoa because of the carbs. You know, it kind of depends on what your goals are. If you're somebody who's trying to lose weight, well, then maybe all of the grains and the legumes that they're suggesting may not be right for you right then. But once you get to a place where you're maintaining, maybe you can add some of them back in. So you kind of have to figure that piece out, what works great. Keep learning. You know, when we're learning, our hypothalamus actually thickens. A part of our brain actually thickens when we're learning. You know, down where I have my beach place, there's a lady there. I love her. She's 94. She's from New Jersey. That's probably why I love her even more. She's constantly playing her piano and learning new songs, because the act of continuing to learn and forcing your brain to do something it's not done, it's, Dr. Paul, I don't know, is it causing more neural connections to be formed? Is that why that's working? Yes, Dr. Paul's shaking his head. Socializing, we talked about that, getting enough sleep, mental health, you know, so you've got your brain health, but then you have your mental health. How do you feel? You know, are you down? Are you needing some extra love and support? You know, really checking in with yourself on that. Challenging your brain, creating healthy habits, protecting your head. Like how easy is that? Like wearing a helmet if you're biking, like who would think about that? But I mean, kids, my son's friend from college, she got a concussion this weekend. You know, she fell down, banged her head, has a concussion. You know, that's long-term brain health. It's not great for that. And loving your heart. You know, this one's near and dear to my heart because of my mom and dad. You know, my dad's brain health is a direct result of how he didn't love his heart enough. And, you know, it's super, super important. It all is all connected. Dr. Paul, Lisa, let me just check in with you guys. Anything else you'd like to say here? Anything on here before we start to wrap up?
So I just wanted to comment too, if we go back to the products, I know there's so much to say about them, but one of the things about the keto perk too, or Bulletproof Coffee, is to make sure the coffee is clean, right? Because I did read a report from Johns Hopkins where coffee is actually one of the most contaminated with pesticides and fungicides that people don't even realize. So the coffee, you know, you want to make sure it's clean coffee. So that's, you know, one thing I want to say. And then the other thing too on the gut is that something that I've learned is that, you know, we talk about the second brain and the gut brain connection. And when you have like a gut feel or butterflies in your stomach, That's real. The second place besides your brain with the most neurons is your gut. So it's your brain and your stomach, really working together. And I thought that was kind of cool that's really real, that and how important that is. And Jill, one thing to the two people that just ordered the V1 smoothie, if they add blueberries to their drink, they'd be doing even more good for themselves.
Exactly. And I have to remind them of other things besides pumpkins. I'm really on my pumpkin kick.
Right.
So thank you, Lisa. Thank you for sharing that. Dr. Paul, anything else that you want to say about any of those last three slides? Let's go ahead and move it back up to the that purple slide there. Anything else here?
No, other than the fact, like even exercise, this may sound simple, but when I don't like running on pavement. I love to trail run. And one of the reasons for that is because when you're trail running, you're dodging little things and you're changing your step because of the rocks and the roots and all the different things you do. What something as simple as that can do for the brain in terms of keeping those neural connections alive is fun. So when you hear about those fun things, exercising for your brain, you can do them. If you get an opportunity, absolutely do it. It's a fun way to actually stimulate the brain and keep things new. But yeah, no, nothing else to add to that. You did a great job with that.
Okay, real quick, we had a bunch of people on the panel with us tonight. Anybody out there have any questions they want to ask? No pressure. I just don't want to leave anybody out if anyone has any questions. Okay, guys. Well, this was a lot of fun. Whenever we pick a topic like this and we dive in, it forces me to go out and I start reading clinical studies, right? Like it's really important to me to be looking at science-based evidence and science-based information. There's a lot of people out there that write books and they're not citing where they're getting this information from. That's super important. There's just, because of the internet, like the good news is we have the internet. The bad news is we have the internet and Dr. Google. Like make sure when you're out there reading and researching that it's based on science, because everything that we try to share with you, it's coming to you after our hard research, to make sure that it's been stuff that's popped up in clinical studies or whatnot, because there's just so much information out there, a lot of misinformation. So Dr. Paul, what would you say to wrap us up here? Anything that you want to say? I'll close this out, but I'll let you go next.
Yeah, I would just say, remember that wellness is a journey, and any little step toward making a difference, whether it's our brain we're focused on or our body, is moving us in a direction of being more well and doing the best we can, creating different gene expression than what we would have had otherwise. So there's always hope. That's what I just want to say. There's always hope if someone is willing to make a change. And I'm just glad that we're able to be here and support people that want to make that change with a community of like-minded people that really want to create wellness for everybody. So that's all.
Absolutely. Thank you. And thanks for being on with us tonight. I know that you would have been okay if Facebook didn't come back up today, because you haven't been feeling your best. And it's hard to believe that you weren't feeling your best, because you've always share your heart and your passion for all this. So thank you so much. And Lisa, thank you for bringing this topic and having us, dive in on this. Anything else that you want to say as we close out?
No, I just appreciate us talking about it. And it was really nice to hear that October is Brain Health Month. So it really brought it all together for us tonight.
It came full circle, and that's even more fun, when, we were talking about Real Age and Share Care, and it turns out the book you're reading, the forward is by Share Care, who does the Real Age test. And then last night I'm looking for brain health pictures. I find that place over in Germany, and they're citing Dr. Amen on their page. So it's like in one full swoop, all this research we're doing is all pointing back to the same stuff: science-based information, evidence-based information. So, all right, you guys, we're going to say goodnight for now. Thanks for everybody watching. If you're catching us on the replay, you have any questions, just follow up with whoever invited you to this call. And as always, thank you, Vfinity, for allowing us and bringing us all together, and for the amazing products and program that we have. We're changing lives one story at a time, whether it's through health, wellness, brain health. It's so fun to be a part of this. So thanks, everybody. Have a good night.